It is inevitable as a beginner Spanish speaker that sometimes you're not going to understand what the other person speaking to you is talking about. So don't just default like I used to do when I started learning, politely nodding and just pretending to understand. No more. Today we are going to teach you as beginners some super powerful phrases that you can say to ask, can you repeat that? Or to survive these moments with confidence without panicking, freezing, or switching to English.
Exactamente. By the end of this episode, amigos, the idea is that you'll be able to say when you don't understand something, ask for explanations, and also how to keep the conversation flowing in Spanish. So, amiga, let's get started.
Welcome to Spanglish Friends, the podcast for true beginner Spanish learners.
Hola, amigos. I'm Val, your experienced Spanish teacher and co-host from Venezuela.
And I'm Em, your Australian co-host who's been learning Spanish for 10 years.
We'll help you get confident listening and speaking beginner Spanish with content you can actually use in real-life conversations.
Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on socials at Spanglish_Friends. Let's get started.
Comencemos.
Firstly, a shout out to our Spanglish Friends community because we have got some awesome accolades from Spotify this year, which is amazing since we launched in March 2025. Been named a 2025 instant hit show, a 2025 most talked about show, and a 2025 most shared show on Spotify. So how amazing is that in just less than a full year? And it's all thanks to you, Spanglish Friends, for choosing us to be part of your Spanish learning journey. So huge thank you from us both.
This means the world to us, and thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias por escucharnos.
Yes. So this episode, we're talking about expressions that you're going to say when you don't understand what someone said to you in Spanish, how to ask for explanations, and how to keep that conversation going even when your Spanish is new and it's a bit shaky. Okay. No more panicked smiling. No more saying, see, when you have absolutely no idea what's going on. Okay. Today, you're going to learn the exact lifesaver phrases that you need to have in your pocket and you can use every day. I can confirm now 10 years learning Spanish, I have used these phrases countless times.
And speaking of vital things, is one of the best ways to learn a language is through your mistakes. I know we can feel ashamed of making mistakes, but they are part of the process. And once you make them, they are going to stick in your mind and probably you will never forget them. We're going to have 3 guiding questions of our episode 40 today to guide our learning.
That's right, Profe Val. And they are, pregunta número 1. What can you say when you need someone else to explain a word or a phrase in Spanish? Things like, how do you say this in Spanish? Or what does this mean? Pregunta número 2. How can you ask for help when you don't understand something in Spanish? Phrases like, I don't understand. And pregunta número 3, how can you express your own Spanish level politely and keep the conversation going so that they know that you're a beginner and you want to keep trying without switching back to English? Phrases like, it's okay, I'm just learning, can we continue?
Very handy to keep the conversation flowing in Spanish, even though you're a beginner. This is amazing. So, amiga, vamos a comenzar. Let's start diving into our first question, nuestra pregunta número 1.
Yes, which is, what can you say when you need someone to explain a word or an expression, a phrase in Espanol?
These questions are perfect for clarifying the information, and they're going to help you understanding 3 things: meaning, spelling, and vocabulary. The first one, and one of the most common, could be ¿Cómo se dice en español? Which means, how do you say, or how to say this in Spanish? For example, you could say, ¿Cómo se dice to swim? For example, in español.
That's right. So it's how do you say this thing? ¿Cómo se dice this or that? Okay. You can replace it with whatever you don't know the meaning of: a pen, a book, a laptop. ¿Cómo se dice plus the thing?
And the person likely is going to answer se dice and the thing. For example, to swim, se dice nadar. And they're going to explain it.
Another great clarifying phrase, if you want to ask, what does something mean? You can ask, ¿qué significa? Plus the word in English. For example, ¿qué significa piscina? I've obviously heard the word piscina in Spanish. I'm asking Val, what does the word piscina mean?
And afterwards, then the person can answer. If the person knows English, might say it with the English word, como piscina significa, is going to say significa, which means it means, and then the word. Piscina significa pool, for example, but maybe if the person doesn't know English, is going to explain to you what is that thing. So could say piscina es un lugar donde puedes nadar. Piscina, like the pool, is a place where you can swim.
That's right. And actually start describing the thing. And that's perfectly fine. Okay, too. And a final phrase, which I've used a lot in my Spanish, is over the years asking someone, how do you spell something in Spanish? And the way you ask that is, ¿Cómo se escribe? ¿Cómo se escribe? How do you spell this? How do you write it?
Exactamente. And here, if you say cómo se escribe, probably the person is going to go straight to say the alphabet and each letter in Spanish. Which, if you don't know, we highly recommend you to head to our episode, I think is 4 and 6. It's a crash course where we teach about how you can start pronouncing letters so you can understand when the person is going to say it.
That's right. That's right. So when they start spelling back to you using the Spanish alphabet, you know how to recognize that as well. Like if they say, ¿Cómo se escribe nadar, to swim? They might say N-D-A-R. Okay. Awesome. So we've learned ¿Cómo se dice en español? How do you say this in Spanish? We've learned ¿Qué significa something? What does this mean? Like ¿Qué significa piscina? We gave an example. Or ¿Cómo se escribe? How do you spell? How do you write this thing?
I would like to give you a tip, not just as a teacher, but also as a friend, which is try not to be shy when you're going to speak. As native speakers, we do really appreciate when someone is trying to learn about our language, our culture, traditions. It shows effort. We are open to teach you and speak. Shake your fears away.
Shake the fears away. You're right, Profe Val. And after 10 years of learning Spanish, I will tell you, friends, it's inevitable, not just possible, it's inevitable. At some point in your Spanish learning journey, you're going to need to use one of these rescue phrases. So might as well commit them to memory now so they're ready in your back pocket when you need to use them. Now, speaking of panic phrases, these are some ones you need to use when someone's speaking way too fast in rapid fire Spanish and you're just thinking, oh no, I have no idea what they're talking about.
This rapid fire Spanish brings us to our second question, which is, what happened when you don't understand? What can you say? Like, I don't understand. Can you repeat? These kind of phrases.
All right. So our first lifesaver phrase you can use is Puede repetir, por favor? Puede repetir, por favor? Which means, can you repeat that, please? Super handy if you need someone just to slow down.
Another handy phrase that you can ask when someone is just using rapid fire Spanish is ¿Puede hablar más despacio, por favor? This is very polite and means, can you speak slower, please?
So handy. I've used this phrase so many times. Puede hablar más despacio, por favor. And my personal favorite that I used a lot as a beginner, and even now, you can say, lo siento, no entiendo. Lo siento, no entiendo, which means, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Okay. Entiendo is from the verb entender, which in Spanish means to understand. No entiendo, therefore, means I don't understand.
Entonces, in summary, we've got ¿Puede repetir, por favor? Which means, can you repeat, please? ¿Puede hablar más despacio? Can you speak slowly, please? And M's favorite one, lo siento, no entiendo. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Use these ones when you feel like I got lost. The person is speaking too fast.
And when you're stressed, your brain will just poof, suddenly forget everything. Okay. So these phrases, commit them to memory so they become automatic. You can use them to keep the conversation flowing in panicked scenarios.
Finally, one of the best ways to keep the conversation flowing is to set expectations. This means that you won't give up even though you're a beginner. You're going to set guiding of interaction. I might not understand this concept, but can you repeat? And I would like to keep the conversation in Spanish, which brings us to our third question. How can you communicate this in Spanish? How can you say, Yes, I am learning and I would like to still speak in Spanish with you. I would like to keep flowing this conversation in Spanish.
So, a great phrase you can use and have in your back pocket is Estoy aprendiendo. ¿Podemos continuar en español? Okay, this phrase means I'm learning. Estoy aprendiendo. Podemos continuar en español means can we continue in Spanish? This politely indicates, hey, look, I'm trying. Let's keep going. I want to keep improving my Spanish.
It's a cute phrase. I love it. This is so handy because normally native Spanish speakers, once they know that maybe you don't know a word in Spanish or something, they're going to try and go default in English if they know English, also because they want to practice. But then you can communicate and say, it's great, but I would really love to continue speaking in Spanish since I am learning. Or you could do also a language exchange and say, te voy a enseñar inglés. I'm going to teach you English y tú me vas a enseñar español and you're going to teach me Spanish. And you can both learn from each other. That's another idea.
That's right. You can do a bit of that Spanglish exchange. Another phrase you could say in scenarios where you want to keep the conversation flowing in Spanish, you could say, solo hablo un poco. Solo hablo un poco, which means I only speak a bit, okay? Solo hablo un poco de español. I only speak a little bit of Spanish. Pero quiero intentar hablar más. Pero quiero intentar hablar más. This means, but I would like to try and speak more. This is a very polite way of just saying, hey, look, I only speak a little bit, but I'd love to try to speak a bit more, keeping that conversation flowing in español.
¿Podemos hablar más en español? Can we speak more in Spanish?
Now, friends, you have all of these new wonderful phrases you can use in panic scenarios to keep the conversation flowing. Now it's time to help them stick in your mind with our reto de la semana, which is our challenge of the week. Get involved now.
Nuestro reto de la semana is, what do you think? From all these phrases and questions we've taught you, what do you think could be the most handy when it comes to speaking in Spanish as a beginner when you're traveling or speaking to someone for the first time? Write it in the comments below. We would love to read them afterwards, and you might even get a shout out in an upcoming episode.
Yes, and if you know any other useful panic survival phrases too, pop them in the chat. We'd love to be able to share them with our Spanglish Friends community. And you know what else is really awesome? Is our Spanglish friend of the week. And this week's shout out goes to Tumi, who commented back on episode 1 quite recently. And they said, Hola, me llamo Tumi. Yo estoy aprendiendo española por primera vez. This was the first sentence I've ever formed in Spanish on my own. Wow, that was so emocionante. I'm learning to be able to speak, to read, to understand almost like a native. I've loved Spanish culture as long as I can remember. Wow, this is amazing. Thanks for joining our community.
Tumi, well done. That's a great sentence. To be the first sentence, it was amazing. Thank you for supporting us and listening to our show. Muchísimas gracias.
Nice, por favor. So let's wrap up everything we've learnt today in 60 seconds, committing to memory. What are those survival phrases we learnt? Maybe you want to grab a pen or paper to write these down, pop it in the notes app on your phone. Firstly, you learnt how to ask for explanations in Spanish with some simple tools and phrases,
which are cómo se dice, how to say, plus the word. We learned qué significa, what does this mean, and our last one, cómo se escribe, which means literally, how do you write this in Spanish?
Secondly, you learnt how to ask for help when you don't understand something. When someone's speaking rapid fire Spanish and you just want to say, whoa, pause, and calm your brain and guide the speaker.
We learned to say, puede repetir. When you didn't understand exactly what the person said, you can say, puede repetir, por favor? Can you repeat again, please? If the person speaks too fast and you want them to slow down a little bit, you can ask, ¿puede hablar más despacio, por favor? Can you speak slower, please? And our last one, if you are lost and you didn't understand, you can say, lo siento, no entiendo. I'm sorry, I don't understand.
And last but not least, you learned how to express that you're a beginner politely so that you can keep conversations flowing in Spanish.
We learned estoy aprendiendo. ¿Podemos continuar en español? This means I'm learning. Can we continue in Spanish, please? ¿Podemos continuar en español, por favor? And our last was, hablo un poco de español, which means I speak a little bit of Spanish, pero quiero intentar hablar más. This means, but I want to try speaking more.
Nice. So these are all excellent phrases to commit to memory. So when the time comes suddenly, and I promise you it will come suddenly, you have these rescue phrases in your backpack ready to go to activate and continue conversations as a beginner in Espanol.
With these phrases, you can continue the conversation and practice with confidence because you have these tools that are going to help you, the person understand, I have to maybe slow down, or, I have to repeat this again. Okay, amigos, that's all for today. Muchísimas gracias por escucharnos. Next week, we are going to host our last episode of 2025, which is all about Christmas and holidays. We are going to teach you how to talk about them in Spanish as a beginner. So stay tuned.
That's right. And remember that practice makes progress, not perfection, Spanglish friends. Catch you next episode for our last one of the year. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks for listening to Spanglish Friends. We're both so proud of the time you're investing to level up your Spanish skills.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, follow us, leave a rating, or tell a friend about the show. It helps our awesome community grow.
Join fellow beginner Spanish learners by following us on Instagram and TikTok at Spanglish_friends.
Congratulations on taking another step in your Spanish learning journey.
Hasta la próxima, amigos.